Thank you. And I'm going to invite Marianna Brennand up, her director, writer, producer of this gorgeous film, MANAS. Thank you for being here. And congratulations to your team on the Venice Film Festival and all of the countless awards this has won so far. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Is it on? Yeah, okay.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for having me and having us.
Yes, of course. So obviously this is, a beautiful and also rather heartbreaking film to watch, but thank you for sharing this story. I wanted to know about your background. You were primarily a documentary filmmaker, right? So how did you make the decision to shift into the fictional storytelling style for this film?
Yeah, I had done previously to MANAS two documentaries and a short documentary at school at UCSB. Went to school here, and so my experience was mainly with documentaries, even though what brought me to cinema was fiction, and what inspired me as I was growing up were really fictional films. And I got into documentary in a very organic way, just feeling compelled and for the necessity to tell certain stories and shed light on it. And that's exactly what happened with MANAS. Around 10 years ago, I was with a friend who is from the region, from Belém do Pará in Brazil, and she had just gone to Marajó Island and got in contact and learned about the cases of sexual exploitation with young children and women in the Tajapuru River. And she was shattered, and she shared with me, and I had never heard something like that was going on in Brazil. And I was really moved and touched, and as a documentarian, my first impulse was, I need to tell this story. I have to go there, I have to investigate and shed light, and maybe, through this documentary, help change things. And so that's how MANAS started. And when I started to think about how to make this film and how to tell this story, that's when I understood that it would be impossible for me ethically to put women and girls in front of the cameras and expose them and ask them to recount traumatic experiences, which would be really violent to them, like making them relive those traumas. And then, so that's when fiction came as the only way possible to tell the story in a way that I could protect those women and tell the story in a way that didn't produce more violence. And in a complex, adding complexity to this reality that is really,
Wow.
Yeah, I agree. Wow.
It's crazy.
And you do that in such I don't even have words for how it's so beautiful, it's so gentle, it's so subtle in a lot of ways, and it's the way that you weave together this story and kind of depict what is really happening here without really saying it or showing it, and it's beautiful. I'm curious, and I do want to get into that, but let's just go there. How was that process for you? Is that kind of how you normally approach your documentaries, or the way that you were able to kind of depict the story without really saying what's happening or showing us what's happening? Was that kind of how you had thought it out initially, or did that happen through the process of creating this?
yeah. I mean, the writing of this story, the script, took 8 years of research and many treatments and just really like a deep dive and dedication to doing that. But what I wanted was, when you think of sexual violence, even to think of it, it makes you, it makes you uncomfortable. It makes you don't want to please don't tell me. I don't want to even imagine that. And I wanted to make a film that could bring the spectator close, because when we don't look, we keep the silence, we keep the violence. So the greatest challenge was really how to bring the spectator close, how to create empathy. What I thought was that the greatest challenge was if I can make the viewer feel as this girl is feeling, if I could put you in her heart and soul, I'm sure we can get some transformation at the end of this journey. So that was like the founding principle of thinking of constructing the film. And also I did not want to show explicit violence, and I wanted to respect this girl's body. And as a woman filmmaker, I had an opportunity to tell a story about us doing it, in the right way, and not, sexualizing this girl's body, not, showing her in a way as if to excuse, as if, there's no excuse for sexual violence. And for me also to shoot, to reenact a scene of abuse, it would be allowing it to happen again. And that for me was also really unacceptable. So it's not like we cut it out in the editing. Like the whole thinking of the film and writing of the film was like, how can we use the cinematic tools and the cinematic grammar with the sound and the ellipses and the editing and the movement of the camera to convey without showing. Yeah.
Well, and you can really feel that cohesiveness. It's pretty clear that you didn't cut it. It feels purposeful, and as you were talking, it made me think it sort of almost parallels the environment she's in, right? Where we can see that all this women, everyone knows that this is going on, and everyone just kind of looks away, and sort of parallels that in a way. I'm curious, you brought up the sound, which is something I was really excited to talk with you about, because I don't know if you all realize this until afterward, but there's no music, there's no score, there's no sound, really. It's the absence of sound as your choice of sound here, and then of course the waves and the water as the backdrop. Talk to us about that choice, and what that process was like.
One thing that we wanted, and that was really developed and thought of in the script, was to use the sound to create an immersive experience in the viewer, and to bring you, to make you like really immerse yourself in her environment, like trying to bring you physically to that place. And the absence of music, I could never hear music while I was writing the script. I could never really, think of music. How can you think of a score, at least for me, in a violent situation? And I also didn't want to just force the spectator in any kind of emotion that it wouldn't come from them, just by watching them, thinking about their own experiences. So the sound is also used a lot, the silence, sorry. It's also used a lot as a symbol. The silence is what keeps the violence going on, and what it allows it to, keep going from generation to generations. And I think it also allows the viewer to think and to draw from their own experiences and to imagine. And it represents the prison and of this silent situation all the characters are going. And there's also a use of the sound that in the beginning, the sound is very naturalistic. You hear the sounds of the forest, of the water. It's really like an immersive encounter with that world, and the world that Marcelo lives. And as the violences start to happen, the sound begins to become a little more psychological, and you start to hear from her perspective. So that's a lot of subtleties and layers in the use of sound.
Wow. Wow. In the same way that you kind of show, silent changes in auditorily, we see silent changes happening in TL, and I'm wondering if that was written in the way that most prominently for me was the way her, her whole body language and her face starts changing, and immediately after she goes on this hunting trip, and we see it in her body without saying anything, without seeing anything. Was that a writing choice? Was that a directing choice with your actress? How did that choice come about?
I wanted you to see also in her physicality the consequences of this violence. So yeah, we thought of that was indicated in the script, and we developed further during the rehearsal process and with our makeup team. I mean, she starts to get a little, you see the change in her face, and that was also in the preparation with her. You see the change in her body. She starts to become like curved, right? And so yeah, with our cinematographer, so that was really thought of, and continuity and understanding. We tried to shoot also as much chronologically as possible, so we could help Jamili, who was 13 and had never worked as an actress before, to navigate those emotions, and so to make it a little easier for her in the process. So yeah, I mean, there are, like, as you said, many layers that were put into this film to make it be really sensorial and sensitive also, and delicate.
What was that like? She's fantastic, by the way. What was it like working with her, directing a minor subject matter that's so heavy, and how did you, keep her safe while communicating what you needed to communicate?
That was one of my main concerns, was how to work with a young. I mean, we just took very care in every step of the way. We had a long preparation. We talked to the parents of the kids and explained to them thoroughly what the film is about. Of course, this reality is very common in the region, so even if they, I mean, it was not shot in Marajó Island, we shot in Belém, so the cases that happen in the Tajapuru River is far from Belém, but they've heard. And the abuse, the intrafamiliar abuse, is something unfortunately very common, not only there, but like next to us. So it's a reality that they know. What I did was like really try to understand during the rehearsal process, like how mature she was, like her psychological universe, and what kind of experiences she has had. But ultimately, I think what we did that was very, very effective and protected her was she never read the script. And that was something that was really important for me. She knew that she was portraying a girl that suffered sexual violence, but I didn't want her to read the scripts, because I didn't want her to live through the literal violence that was going on with her. So we did a preparation that was very playful and symbolic, and really just trying to bring them as a family, and with her friends in the community, and a physical preparation too, because Jamili is about that's when he's going to abuse you. So I avoided all those things.
Wow, that's a really interesting way of directing. I mean, and you can see it. Like, I've just been wondering, like, how was this communicated to this girl? And where did you find her? What was the casting process like?
To find a young cast, it took us 8 months of research in the region. And Jamili, Cynthia, and Carol, who are the main 3 girls, we found them at the very end when we were already like in pre-production in Belém. And it was like our last shot, and they came, it was just like, wow. I mean, the first time I saw Jamili and Cynthia, they were just like, we were sure. it was them, but it took us like 2 weeks of workshops doing those conversations and talking to them and just understanding if they would be able, psychologically to understand the environment of making a film. And with the adult cast, they are all Brazilian professional, very experienced actors from all over Brazil. We have Dira Paz, who plays Delegada Rita, who's one of our most renowned, experienced actors from soap operas and cinema. So it was wonderful for me, directing actors for the first time to have this, such a rich experience. And it was amazing, and they were so brave. I mean, I'm very grateful to them because they had the adult cast who knew what, who read the script and had to build those very difficult characters, and to navigate through those harsh emotions, and just trusting me and trusting the crew and the whole process that we proposed to them.
Wow. What was that like, in terms of production, going from, again, documentary, putting together your first fiction feature team? Like, what was your first step in taking it in that direction?
The first step was really researching, going to Marajó. That's how the film started. We won a grant in Brazil for script development, which allowed us to do our first field trip research in Marajó Island and write the first treatment of the script. And then everything started to happen after that, and just, contacting and bringing together this amazing crew that works with fiction, that were people that we admired for a long time, that I knew their work, and, just putting this team together. And, even from the AD, the assistant director, which is such an important, right, person in the making of a fiction film, I admired her. I saw her working in a film set in 2007. I hadn't even thought of MANAS, and I saw her working, and I thought she was just brilliant. She was just like so delicate and caring with everyone, but also firm, and and I looked and I said, when I do my first fiction film, I wanna have her as my assistant director. And I told her, and then like almost 10 years later, I was like, yeah, so I have a script. And so really it was built from, admiration and people who I really wanted to work with.
I love a female AD. We don't see that very often, so that's really cool.
One of the most amazing and famous and brilliant Brazilian ADs.
Yeah.
Female first AD, I should say.
First
a lot
AD.
of seconds, but
First
that's incredible. And do you think that there's anything like, because I don't know how often it happens that people kind of shift filmmaking genres in that way. Do you think there's anything from your documentary experience that like really prepared you for making a fiction film, and vice versa, something that was maybe the most challenging for you shifting to fiction?
I think going from the documentary to making this film that it's based in a real story, it felt really natural for me. And I think what helped me from my experience as a documentarist, really like respecting the story and the characters, fictional or not, and trying to be truthful and ethical. I think the ethics of doing a documentary, like when you interview someone and they open themselves to you, sometimes you have to protect your character from themselves, and just really trying to use what I had, and of course talk, because this film is based on real stories. I was interviewing social assistants and psychologists and women and this community in Marajó Island. So what I learned from doing documentaries and of interviewing and taking care of the subject that you were talking to, that was really very important. And I think that what prepared me. I mean, the way I always looked at fiction, I mean, that just from going to school and having this professor. You guys know Edward Bronigan, the film theorist? We used to read his books at UCSB, and he was one of my professors. And, you know, a lot of what I know about cinema and the language of cinema, aesthetics, and understanding, you know, it came from like really studying films and theory of films. So I think that background, when I had to just like do this shift, also helped me a lot to think of how to put together this story. And the crew that worked with me, the writers, I mean, this film, it really exists the way it is because I was able to work on it really for so many years, and just to build on the complexity of the characters and how really like with layers. I didn't want, you know, anything to be like cliche or superficial. I had this obsession with authenticity, which might come from my documentary background, and I wanted the spectator to feel as if you were seeing life unfold in front of yourself, and it was very important for this story that you would believe in every breath of this girl and in everything you see on the screen, because the reality of sexual violence is so unbelievable, right? It's so hard to believe that something like that happens. So for me, the film had, for it to work, and it had to be authentic.
I mean, you can absolutely feel that, the time and space that you were allowed to make it feels that way in the story as well. Just very gentle, and it breathes. And what was the most challenging thing about, you know, maybe something during production or pre-production in the process of making this?
I mean, the film took 10 years, so
Okay,
yeah.
wow.
From the beginning of research to shooting and to like releasing it in premiering in Venice, it started in 2014 and we premiered in 2024. So yeah, we had a lot of challenges. First, just experiencing and going to this place and seeing what happened, you know, and that was really hard to hear those stories and to navigate that reality for such a long time, especially like investigating and researching and talking to, you know, I had a psychoanalyst, just like reading the script with me and just understanding the psychology of trauma and trying to see how we could build those layers and into this character's trajectory. So just you know, the subject of it was very challenging. But I think that as a woman, the more I learned about the violences, the more it made me certain that I had to tell this story. But yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, the shooting in the Amazon, I mean, creating a shooting schedule when you have to consider the tides and, you know, protecting your crew. We shot 95% of the scenes in the river and in the island, so that the shooting was also very challenging. But I mean, the whole crew, everyone was so how do I say, it felt like a mission for everyone to tell this story. Everyone was so proud and happy to be doing this film. So even though it was, you know, challenging, everyone was really, you know, with their heart and soul and the most and best energy putting to make it happen.
I'm sure that was valued after having, you know, getting through a heavy scene and having people enjoy being there. I have another question for you, and then I'm gonna go to you guys if you have questions, so get yourself ready. I guess I'm wondering, you know, there's a lot of different types of films in the world, right? And this is obviously coming from a documentary background, making this film that's so poignant and sharing this story with us. I was just wondering if you could tell us what you think about using film as a tool for social change and where that fits.
Thank you for asking this. I'm surprised I didn't say this. That's why I made MANAS, because I believe in cinema as a tool for social and political change. And I think that, the only way to bring change, at least I believe, it's through empathy. Unless you feel what someone else is going through, unless you put yourself in someone else's shoes, you won't be able to relate to it. And I think cinema has this power to put, and that's how MANAS was constructed. That's why the film is so through the eyes of this girl. She's absolute protagonist. So you only see what she sees, you feel what she feels, and I really believe in the power of that strong connection. And yeah, so when this film was a documentary, it was meant to transform, really, and I hope this film is just echoing all over the world. We've been touring with MANAS for almost a year now. This film has such a beautiful force and connection with people, and I hope you spread the word to your friends. We are today, is it today, Maria, that we are starting our qualifying run at Langley Theater in Glendale. So tell your friends to come see MANAS, and to maybe, I really hope that this film will inspire women and children, girls and men who go through violence to break their silences and know that there is a way out and that we can all support each other. And so, thank you for this question.
Yes, thank you. And we really do feel that it does feel that we're right there with her. So, thank you for that answer. Okay, who has a question? If you could raise your hand right there, and he's going to bring the mic to you.
Very moved by the film. Amazing. My family's from there as well, so it's been especially important to me. And I was wondering a little more about the issues, specifically of filming in the Amazon, but specifically the rain, how to navigate the schedules throughout the rain, also the cinematography in the jungle, especially that follow scene where she's running towards her father in Carolina. How to kind of navigate like a big crew in such in a hospital environment.
Yeah, that was one of our challenges, and as I said, Kichi Fel, our first AD, and our whole production team took very good care of the crew and protecting them. I mean, physically, first but we shot, just so you know, Belén, you're from Brazil.
I'm from Rio, but my family's
from Rio. Yeah, we shot. We were very lucky. It took us 1 year of location scouting because of security and logistical reasons. We could not shoot in Marajó Island, which, as a documentarist, it was my dream and desire to shoot on location. But as you see in the film, most of the communities don't have electricity, and Marajó is really, really far from the lane. So financially, it would be impossible, and then security-wise and logistically. So we had to find Marajó somewhere else in the Amazon region. And the Tajapuru River, as you see, is really large. I mean, one of the things that really impressed me going there was just like how fragile and those girls were in that huge river. I mean, it's not like you can cross it to ask for help from one margin to the other, just like swimming. And not all of the rivers in the Amazon are like that. So we really it took us a year, and then luckily we found just off the coast of Belém, behind the Cumbu, which is like a very touristy island in Belém. We found a place that really looked like Marajó, that we could build, but we had to build, for example, Marcieli's house, because in Marajó the houses are like projected onto the water, and in that region of Belém the houses are palafitas, but they are on the ground. And the fact that in Marajó that most of the houses are projected into the water, it happens what you saw in the film. Nature really, stops her from just like running out of her house and asking for help. So that was also really important to convey to the spectator how, entrapped she was in this world. And but like we had like a 20-minute drive by boat from our hotel, which had a marina, to this island where we were shooting. And yeah, we had, I mean, I think the most challenging was the tide of the river, which sometimes we were like working with water like on our knees. And in Belém, as you know, I think you asked about the rain, because, you know, it rains every day at around like 5 p.m. and, you know, we have this rain. But yeah, we were working around it. And we also had a challenge because she's absolute protagonist and she's a minor, so we had less shooting hours, because it's only like a smaller journey if you're working with a child actor. So yeah, we had to protect the crew in the forest, which we didn't. We used the forest that was surrounded by our location, the house of Macieli, where we constructed the house of Macieli. And I think the most challenging and worry for me were the scenes in the boat. That one we had to like storyboard and to plan it a lot, and you know, that huge barge that you see, it was just, I think, one of the biggest production values in the film. Our producer, Carolina Benevides, she found a company of a company of commercial barges that was against sexual violence, that really tried to reinforce policies in this ethic that I was talking about, really, you know, surpassed everything in the film. But it's like it costs millions to stop a boat like that. We had them, they gave us 2 days of shooting, and you know, we had to rehearse a lot. One of the guys from the barges is a double. I mean, he's not an actor. The guys who help her like get inside the boat, and you know, we had, yeah. So I think that, did I answer your question?
Of course, yeah.
So I hear a lot from directors that before making a film, they can imagine the ending that they want to go towards. When writing this film, did you always know that it would end with the death of Marceli's abuser? And basically, I would love to hear you talk about the ending of MANAS and why it was important to give our protagonist that agency.
Thank you. I love this question. Yeah, so the ending of the film is the only scene in the film and that I did not draw from a real story that happened in Marajoy that were told to me. That was my decision as a director. It was not from the beginning. In the beginning, the film had an open ending. In the beginning, I say in the first, second, maybe third treatment the most. And as we started, the script really was a process of like going deep in the psychology of trauma and of what would happen to this girl. And just from my experiencing of going there and understanding the entrapment and how it's difficult for us here, living here, to get out of a violent situation, let alone for a girl, you know, living in that place with those like physical restrictions of asking for help. And then at one point it was really clear to me that, you know, she asked for help. How many institutions failed her? And that's the message that I really wanted to come across with this ending. She tried to ask for help inside her home, to her mom, to the church, in her community, at school, to the police, and you know, everyone failed her. And to protect herself and to protect her sisters, she had to take matter in her own hand. And really, in that reality, in that place, it was the only way possible. And of course, no one wants to have to do that. It's like a woman who is suffering domestic violence. She tries to ask for help, and then one day she just has to grab whatever she encounters in front of her and hit her aggressor and maybe kill him, or you know, who knows. So really, the ending of the film, giving this girl agency, was very important for me, to symbolize that the failure of the system and of this girl having to take, you know, to defend herself. that way, and also like symbolic deaths. Not like I'm saying, you know, go out and kill your abuser, of course, but symbolic deaths and ways that we can, you know, break those cycles, understand how to break those cycles.
I really love that that's the choice you made. Not to condone that either, but it was satisfying to see, you know, after so many generations clearly of this happening in her family and her community, that this child, was braver than anyone else around her and was able to change that, you know, to break that cycle. Do we have another question? Oh, yeah, right here, and then we'll go to you over there, okay?
Yes, hello, thank you so much for being here. Your film was phenomenal. I love how the image and the silence really carried the film. I am filming a documentary in Honduras, so I wanted to ask you more about like how to relate to the local communities where you're filming that and building trust within them.
Yeah, so that really happened during the research process while I was going to Marajó Island and going, you know, along the Tajacuru River and, you know, visiting those communities. But I had the help of two very important people who actually inspired the character of Delegada Rita, of the police officer, Sister Irma Maria Henriqueta and Officer Delegado Rodrigo. They act in the Amazon region protecting women and girls against sexual violence, and they do that in the Marajó Island. So I was introduced to them in the beginning of my research, and they, you know, welcomed me in Marajó, and they took me, you know, around the communities, and they, you know, opened this path for us that we started to construct slowly. And I think it's just, you know, respecting and knowing how to listen, knowing when to stop, and, you know, just respecting boundaries. But when we were shooting, as I said, we shot in the lane, so I mean, there wasn't a community around us in the location where we were shooting. But one thing that we did, and it's not necessarily related to your question, but I remembered, was that in order to protect the making of this film, in order for us to have freedom to do what we thought we had to do and not suffer any kind of threats, we never talked about the making of the film publicly until it was released, until it was ready to be released. And that was really hard financially wise, because in Brazil, I mean, it's really important to get financing from the government and from enterprises and, you know, tax debt, that, you know, you talk about your film, like you say in the press, I'm making this film, I have this person attached, this actor. So we were not able to do that. We avoided that in order to protect the integrity of the crew and, you know, so I think it depends on the project, on the subject matter.
Absolutely, thank you, that's perfect.
I'm just curious really quick, did you miss out on any like financing opportunities because of that choice to protect them in that way?
No. I mean, we were able to do it, not having to, you know, to advertise that we were doing the film. Yeah.
Okay, I think this might be the last question we have time for right over here.
Parabéns, it was a really beautiful film. And I have two questions, if that's okay. I'm wondering what the reception of the film has been in the community that you're the subject. Obviously, I know there's electricity, that's a challenge, but you mentioned some folks that you worked with, collaborated with during your research, and I'm wondering if they, for example, have seen the film. And then the second question is, as someone who has studied religion in Brazil, specifically for my own work in the past, I know that Pentecostalism and the evangelical church is growing exponentially in following and in power in Brazil, politically, financially, and I'm wondering if you have thoughts about, and then we saw that kind of faith in the Amazon here, if you have any thoughts about sexual violence and Pentecostalism in Brazil, in this region, and the lack of, I guess, confronting this challenge or its role in perpetuating it in a way.
Yeah, I think what the film tries to show is how we have these institutions of power perpetuating, misogyny and patriarchalism, and violence against women. That's exactly like the sermon that we see in the film is exactly what we experienced there during our field research. Stand anything to keep your family together. So yeah, these institutions help to perpetuate the violence and the silences, and in that region you have a lot of evangelical Pentecostal churches and Catholic churches too, who sort of acts as, the state doesn't get there and it's not very effective, so it ends up that those religious institutions end up doing the work, the structure work that the state should be doing. And yeah, I mean, and not only in Marajó Island, I have a friend from Rio who was suffering domestic violence for years from her husband, and she was going to an evangelic extremist church. And the pastor there would say to her every time, seeing her beaten up, you have to stand up and you have to, stay beside your husband, which, and to pray about it, exactly, which is something absolutely not acceptable. And so, yeah, so it's really everything that's in the film. It's supposed to, I hope, make us think about it and question those. And what was your other question? Yeah? Oh, okay.
Did we
Thank you.
touch on how the actual community you were focused on received this film?
Perfect. So the community, so in Marajó, we are just now starting a circuit to use the film as a social tool there and bringing back to the community. So we just started this year, but next year we have a whole year of showing the film inside the communities with a social assistant and, bringing, help and, trying to help and to those women and girls. So we are very, very excited for this next step of MANAS. Yes.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for being here with us, Marianna, and for
Thank you.
sharing MANAS with us. Thank you guys for being here.